Hello, everybody. This is webinar 4 of my book. So, let's get started. My name is Hope Friedman, and I'm the writer of the go-to guide for empowering our youth. This is my 5th webinar, and it's about being an upstander. First, I want to apologize for any background sounds or anything you might hear during the duration of this webinar. I am in my house and it's a bit loud here, so I'm going to be trying to talk as loud as possible so you can block out those sounds. I will try to be as fluid as possible and not read off of a script, but it's hard at times and it might sound a little bit wordy. So I want to say that if you have watched my I also want to say that if you've watched my past 3 videos, or sorry, 4 of them, then you might want to skip to the information, which is about 15 minutes in, once I get past all the about me stuff. I also want to mention briefly that this will be lengthy, and it's not really an overview, more of a book reading. So if you want to listen to all of it, then I recommend skipping around and finding what you want, or reading the book for yourself on Apple Books. Okay. To start off, I'd like to take a moment to introduce myself and share a bit about the purpose of this video. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Hope Friedman. Right now, I'm a high school student, juggling school life and various activities, including something very close to my heart, my involvement in Girl Scouts. For those of you who might not be familiar with Girl Scouts, it's an amazing organization that's somewhat like Boy Scouts, if you've heard of that. Girl Scouts focuses on empowering young girls, helping us to develop independence, leadership skills, and confidence. It's more than just earning badges or going on some trips. It's about learning to be strong, and also capable individuals who have responsibilities and can take care of themselves and others. In order to work towards the Gold Award, which is the highest honor a Girl Scout can earn, there's a process quite long that begins with it begins with earning the Bronze and Silver Award. There are different ways of earning it, though, so I'll go into more detail about how that all works in a bit. But for now, the key takeaway is that the Gold Award is a significant achievement and the main inspiration behind my project I'm sharing with you today. Beyond Girl Scouts, I want to share a little bit more about who I am and what motivates me. One of my biggest passions is helping my community in various ways. I believe in making a positive impact wherever I can, and I often try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone by combining my interests. For example, I have a website called equalmedicalaccess.org, which is dedicated to advocating for equal access to healthcare. This is just another cause I deeply care about, and I'd be thrilled if you took a moment to visit the site and maybe even show some support if it resonates with you. Aside from that, I'm also actively involved in my school community. I enjoy tutoring my peers and participating in honor societies. Volunteering and giving back to those around me is something I find truly rewarding. And of course, last but not least, my Girl Scout community is a core part of my life. It's not only a place where I strive to continue and make a difference, but it's also a strong support system I can rely on. So that's a little bit about me and why I'm here today. I'm excited to share more about my Gold Award journey with you and my book, and hopefully it inspires you in some way and you take something positive away from it. So let's get into some technical stuff. Over here in the corner, I have the cover for my book and how it will look when you search it up. It's currently on Apple Books for free, and hopefully in the future will show up on some other prominent sites, maybe Barnes & Noble or Overdrive. For the book, I wrote down some important factors for writing the book and features about it. First, my main goal was always empowering children. But what's special about my book is that it's not directed towards the kids. It's directed towards their parents, but also just educators and people who work with kids. You may also say that there's guys all over the world. Why would I want to read this specific one? What makes this one different and special? And while, yeah, it's true, this was written with children in mind. And because I am a child, I tried using my experiences to guide the book, which is also why in every chapter I wrote about my thoughts and opinions so that adults can understand from the eyes of a child what it's like to experience these traits and how it feels to learn about it. Next, I want to embrace the emotions. As I wrote in the introduction, this is a direct quote from the book. This book isn't here to force traits onto children. It's here to bring out what's already inside of them and let it shine. And that is truly my intentions. All kids have emotions, and I want to show adults how to bring it out of them. The next is also connected because it's not about forcing it on them, but just like in school, there needs to be a basis of where it starts. So, for example, I was talking to my cousin, and he was telling me how he didn't know the difference between sympathy and empathy. In this case, I'd be teaching him the difference, and I showed him the correct ways to show it. My next bullet is inclusivity, and the other one is accessibility. These go hand in hand. My book can be used for all types of people, and it's not just for parents. It's for educators and Girl Scout leaders and for people wanting to learn more about kids and how they learn. And also just people who work with children in general. I also think that Apple Books is accessible for all people, especially because nowadays I feel like everyone just owns some sort of Apple product. So it's very inclusive. And I do want to just bring up again that it's free, and it's not I did it like that on purpose to make it more accessible, and I hope in the future I will be able to put out different versions of it. That's why I want to put it on other sites to make it more accessible. But if you don't have a Apple device but you still want to read it, I'd recommend emailing me. I put my email on all the captions in my videos, and email say I don't have Apple but I really want to read your book, and I'd be happy to send a PDF of it, which is not at all a hassle for me. So I really wouldn't mind, and it would and I'd be able to share my book, which is what I've wanted. So it would make me happy. So in the book, I go through 8 main chapters. Of course, I started and ended with an introduction and conclusion. But as for the traits I talked about, it's as follows: kindness, confidence, empathy/sympathy, leadership, being an upstander, communication, honesty, and gratitude. Personally, my favorite in terms of writing and showing it in my daily life was leadership, because because that's always been pretty big for me. But also, it goes similarly with being an upstander, and they're both really my favorites. Especially being a Girl Scout, those traits have been ingrained in me since I was little, and something I always ask myself to be. In addition, in order to be a leader, you need to possess some sort of upstander qualities too, and in order to be an upstander, you definitely need to be a leader. So they really do go together, and they were my favorite to write about and my favorite to teach and help others understand and show them. Okay. Next, I want to briefly talk about what's discussed in each video. These aren't really live, so I don't know if it'd still be considered a webinar, but that's what I'm going to consider it at least. But in the future, very soon, I will have the live videos. So look for that. Each day will have a new chapter discussed. This is true, except it's not really each day. As I said before, this is my 5th webinar, and it hasn't been filmed in order of days, but instead at different times. So this means that I have filmed maybe webinar 3, 4, and this 5th one all in the past few, week or so, but then my first 2 were filmed about a month ago. So it's not really each day, it's more like chronological order. So webinar 1, then webinar 2, webinar 3, and so on. But nonetheless, each video will focus on a single chapter of the book, just like how today's chapter is 5, learning how to be an upstander, and the last video was chapter 4, leadership, and so on. Next I will do a overview and book reading. So it won't be a full reading of the chapter, and I did that on purpose. So if you do want to read it in more detail, or see more examples for certain categories, then you can easily access it and read more with your within your own time frame. Again, I did this on purpose because this video is very lengthy. If you just wanted to watch a certain part of the video, for example, you just wanted to know about good books for teaching kindness, I'd heavily recommend you skip to that part or go online and read for yourself. And like I said before, this book was made for skipping and not really to be read cover to cover, even though you definitely can. You can even see that when I make each of these webinars, I make sure to include a introduction, this whole brief part talking about who I am, my purpose, all that stuff. And then in the end, I have a brief few things that I like to finish it off with. And it's the same from every video. And I do that on purpose because I know that people most likely aren't watching webinar 1, then webinar 2, webinar 3. And if you are, that's great. And I say in the beginning to skip about 15 minutes because this is all the same. But if you are new and you just want to learn about one category, for example, being an upstander, then it would really make sense to skip and just go to this. So that's why I include these introductions and little conclusions to the webinars. Next, I talk about my writing process and my why. Towards the end, I go through my little tips and tricks and my process using Apple Books as a first-time writer. I'm not an expert at all, but I like to throw in some of my experience to make it a little easier for people just like me who are looking for some help, and I will be able to help them and tell them a little bit about my experience. Sorry, I just want to... Okay. Then I will talk about Girl Scouts and my overall journey. Girl Scouts has been a big part of my journey and the main reason why I'm writing this book. So I love to talk about it and what it means to me, as well as how I got to where I am now and the goal process and how it leads me to here. So I love sharing that. It's very big. Then, of course, I add fun and personal stories throughout. In order for it not to be super boring, I love to throw in a little flair and spice and share some interesting stories throughout the way, so it's not as boring. And you'll see that it does get a little wordy at times, but it's all for... there's also parts where I love to include some of my own flair and spice and just talk a little bit more about myself. So you can look forward to that. Okay. So, as I said, today's chapter is about being an upstander. This is taken directly from the book as the first line. It says, meaning of upstander according to facing history and ourselves. A person who speaks or acts in support of an individual or cause, particularly someone who intervenes on behalf of a person being attacked or bullied. If you go through and read the book, you'll also notice that I wrote other people's definitions from family and friends, and really just anyone who wanted to help me in my community. during the process. And I think it's important, and again, I think it's important to find people to rely on, but I'm going to talk about that more later. But I did include a lot of different definitions because a 5-year-old learns a lot different than a 50-year-old. So I think it's important to show the different perspectives. I have definitions from a 9-year-old to a 50-year-old, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of different perspectives. But of course, if you are teaching a class or your child or a kid you're babysitting, I highly recommend you ask them first and say, hey, what do you think it means to be an upstander? And see what their definition is. Because if you start to teach them and they don't know what it means, it can be difficult. So they want to have a basic definition, something like this, or maybe even more simple for younger kids. And it can help them just understand a little bit more about what it is. So, yeah. Next, I wrote about what it is and why it's important. Just to clarify for everyone and make it really clear what I'm trying to get across. I'll read it, but again, take it with a grain of salt because everyone's different and it can have different meanings for everyone. But this is what I got from my experiences and what I know. It's a little too long for this slide, so I'm just going to be reading it off of my paper. But if you want to see it or read it for yourself, you can go to Apple Books. Teaching kids what it is to be an upstander and why it's necessary is so important. It teaches them how to stand up for others and also for themselves. It helps them understand what it's like to be in someone else's shoes and how the other person might feel. Once a child understands both sides of the situation and sees it from everyone's perspective, they're able to think through what they can and what they can't do. And also, I want to add on, at that point, they also should understand when it's their job, or not job, but when they can stand up for their classmate or peer or whatever, whatever the situation may be, and when it's appropriate to get a trusted adult into the situation. Because while helping a friend in some sort of bullying situation, for example, it might not be the best to go directly to the bully and say something. In that scenario, it's definitely important to go to a teacher or a parent, but it's also important to comfort the person who it's happening to and tell them how to stand up for themselves, and something similar to those lines. Okay, so how do we teach it? Every chapter I include a how do we teach it section, and this has ranges from 3 to 6 is the first chunk, 7 to 12 is the second chunk, and 13 and older is the third chunk. And it just has a bunch of discussion topics. It's different for every chapter, but usually it's questions, discussion topics, things to ask your kids in those age ranges to help them understand what being an upstander is before you get into activities and stuff like that. So you want to understand what they think it is first. So these are how you can bring it up. So for ages 3 to 6, it's at this age, it's best to focus on hands-on activities and simple made-up scenarios to help kids practice what they would do in different situations. To be an upstander, a child needs to build traits like kindness, helping others, friendship, and respect. While this may seem like a lot for a younger child, breaking it down into simple questions like, what does it mean to be kind? Or how can you show kindness in a friendship? Makes it easier for them to understand. By introducing these ideas step by step, you're helping them learn through small, meaningful conversations rather than just presenting a big, abstract word. For ages 7 to 12. By this age, many kids have heard about what it means to be an upstander. Even if they don't know the exact term, they likely already understand the basic traits involved, such as empathy, fairness, and standing up for what's right. Ask them questions like, what is an upstander? Do you think you're an upstander? Have you ever stood up to a bully or helped someone being treated unfairly? These kinds of questions open the door for for comfortable, friendly conversation. From there, you can dive deeper into topics like bullying and cyberbullying. Discuss why it happens, what harm it causes, and how they can safely respond. Um, and how they can safely respond. Help them identify trusted adults they can turn to when they're unsure what to do. Talk about inclusion too, how to notice when someone feels left out and ways to include them. Help in mind that keep in mind that every child is different. Some may understand certain ideas better than others. So adjust your conversation based on the maturity, experience, and personality, which I recommend for any age. Ages 13 and older. At this stage, it's helpful to introduce more complex ideas, like the bystander effect and advocacy. Ask questions like, why do you think people stay silent? Is it a fear, confusion, or a belief that someone else will step in? So make sure you discuss that. And I do want to mention too, I recently took a course in psychology. We learned about the bystander effect. If you don't know what it is, basically it means when something is happening, for example, someone is injured or I'll give you an example. So in a school, if someone is injured, they're sitting on the side and the bell rings and children walk past. A lot of people will look. They'll say, oh, like, should I help? Should I not help? They'll look around, they say, oh, there's a lot of other people here. I'm sure someone else will help. I'm just going to walk away. There's a lot of other people seeing this. I'm sure they'll help. I'm just going to go. And everyone keeps saying that. And when everyone keeps saying it, then no one helps. So that's what being the bystander effect is. Because no one's standing up. No one's saying, I will help. Everyone's saying, oh, the next person will do it. The next person will do it. And the next person never does it. So it's important to teach your kids not to fall into that routine, even though it's normal. It's a lot of people do that, and it's a natural kind of instinct to stay in your own lane and focus. But there's also times that it's important to stand up and to not follow the flow of everyone else. Okay. So usually I list some activities, but I couldn't think of too many. So I instead included one of my favorite activities from when I was a kid, and it's called What Would You Do? So when I was a kid, I used to love the show What Would You Do? Some episodes may be outdated now or not ideal for younger kids, but showing older kids these type of situations can be incredibly helpful. Making it interactive by pausing to ask, what would you do in this situation? Really helps put them in someone else's shoes. And the host, John Quinones, that was the premise of the show. They showed the situation first with no one else around. They said, this happened, this happened, this happened. Pause. What would you do? And I'm sure many people have watched it, but they get real people, and they put these actors in, and these real people come around, and they interact and they react to what is happening. There's a lot of different scenarios, but usually it just puts them on the test. Even though they don't know they're actors, they think it's real. It puts them on the spot and says, what would you do? And so it makes you think, what would I do if that happened? And that's the main goal here. Having a conversation about what they would do or wouldn't do, or wouldn't act a certain way, helps them think through the pros and cons of different choices. Some episodes focus more on kids, while others focus adults. But either way, the show is both entertaining and a great tool. And I really do believe that. Watching the show as a kid, I would say to myself, what would I do? And in the moment, it's harder, but by making practice stories, it gets a lot easier. So by looking at a situation, maybe one of the situations, for example, is a kid a peer getting bullied, and maybe this is part of the video. For example, one of the What Would You Do videos was a kid getting bullied, one of your friends, And you pause the video, you say, what would I do? You go through the pros and cons. So maybe, should I tell a teacher? Should I go to the bully? Should I just stay with my friend and see if my friend needs help? And just go through the pros and cons. Yes, I should do this. No, I should not do that. Maybe I should do this, and brainstorm. So I think it is a good activity for maybe one kid, maybe if you have a kid, if you're a parent, but definitely good for maybe a group activity, and you can even make it fun interacting by making it into a skit. Put the kids in groups and say, okay, here's your situation. A kid is being bullied. Someone act as a bully. Someone act as the maybe child being bullied, and someone act as the upstander, and makes them think, well, what should we do? What is the right way to approach the situation? How can I approach it to make this better for everyone involved? And it can be something fun, and they can make a little skit out of it, and show it to their class. And I think it's a good idea. And there's so many different scenarios that could happen, and it's important. It's not just bullying, but there are other things. It's heavily on bullying, but not always. So next, I have some books. Perfect books to read for younger kids, older kids. I'd say, so I'll read the books first. So first is Say Something by Peter H. Reynolds, and then Wonder by R.J. Palacio, I want to say. Stand Tall, Molly Melon by Patty Lovell. Spaghetti in a Hot Dog Bun by Maria Dismondy, and Red, A Crayon Story by Michael Hall. And so Wonder, I'd say, definitely a chapter book. If you have younger children, it's definitely more of a mature book, so I wouldn't highly recommend it, unless you have at least over the age of 11 or 12, I want to say, just because they might not understand the concept as well. But it is a good teaching resource, I will say. It just shows how to be kind. It shows that everyone's going through something different, and it's important to see it from that way. Look in different perspectives, which is what I always say, and say how do they feel, and just go through it and make sure you see it from different sides. And that's what Wonder really does. The movie's amazing. The book is fantastic, and I've read both. I think I read it when I was in 5th grade, I want to say. When I was I think a lot of schools nowadays read it and watch it in school. So I watched it in health class, but I've watched it many times. I watched it in theaters, I watched it with my parents, I watched it at school, everywhere you could think of. I've probably watched Wonder, and it's really something that's never short of a teaching moment, I will say. So then the rest of these books are mainly targeted towards younger children, but I would definitely look before showing it to your kids. Just make sure it's age appropriate. Okay, next I have some websites. First I have learningforjustice.org, stopbullying.gov, and facinghistory.org. It's called Facing History in Ourselves, but it's facinghistory.org. And these are just a few resources that I found online. Definitely not all of them. Definitely not. But yeah, if you're looking for resources to read some blogs, maybe find some activity guides, teach more. I love the stopbullying.gov, because a lot of times when children think of bullying, they think of one person being mean to one other person. That's it. That is almost never the case. A lot of times it is, but now with social media, cyberbullying is becoming a massive problem. And I think it's very important to mention that, because while yes, sometimes it is one-on-one, a lot of times it's one person being bullied by another person online. And it's even worse because you don't know who you're talking to. It can say anonymous. It can be a friend. It could be someone pretending to be a friend. You really never know, and it's hard, especially a lot of the time, because if it is one of your friends being cyberbullied, it's not always easy to tell, and they might be ashamed of it. They might not want to admit it. So I say it's important to stop it to begin with. Stop the person bullying, teach them that it's not okay, and then teach the other person that it's okay to speak up and it's okay to need help. And that's what stopbullying.gov really helps for. And the rest of them, of course, go through that too. So those are great resources, not just the only ones. There are so many more online, just a few that I found that I thought were great. Okay, next I have my personal thoughts. This is my favorite section. I mean, I'm a little bit biased, but it's the part that really makes it different and stand out from other people's, other books, I want to say. So sometimes I talk about sometimes I talk about what it means to me. Sometimes I talk about examples. Sometimes I talk about an experience I've had, or a time when I was this trait, when I was an upstander, or when I was a leader. And so it's really just, you don't know what you're going to get, but it's always something that's different and really nowhere you can find it anywhere else. So in my school, one of the most repeated messages over the years has been about being an upstander. From assemblies to classroom lessons, we are constantly taught to speak up when we see something wrong, especially when it comes to bullying and cyberbullying. The focus is always on helping others, on making sure no one feels alone or targeted, and on stepping in when someone else is being treated unfairly. But what happens when you are the one who needs an upstander? Sometimes the people who seem the strongest on the outside are the ones who are struggling the most on the inside. There are times when you do not know how to speak up for yourselves, or when you are too scared to say that what you need. In those moments, you do not need someone to save you, but you do need someone to notice, to care, and to stand beside you. This is why learning to be your own upstander is so important. It means recognizing your worth, setting boundaries, and speaking up when something doesn't feel right. Advocating for yourself takes strength, but it is a skill we all need in school, work, and relationships. When we learn to stand up for ourselves, we give others permission to do the same. And I find that was my personal thoughts, but again, I want to add on a little bit and say that to be an upstander for others, you need to be an upstander for yourself. Because as much as you can protect others and try to do that, it's not helpful if you can't protect yourself and speak up for yourself. So I think it's a very important quality trait, and it's not something to be overlooked, because being an upstander and standing up, speaking out, is so important. The next 2 or 3 slides are more of the conclusion slides, so I do want to just wrap it up with more of my personal thoughts right now. I want to just state again of how big a deal cyberbullying is. So at my school, we have something called Say Something. It's a reporting system that's used for not just bullying situations, but a variety of situations. And the whole idea is to see something online, you see something, maybe, in this case, I'm going to be using bullying, but you see someone being bullied, you report it, that's the second step, and then someone gets in contact with you, they talk to you about it, ask you how you know about it, and then they go straight to who's being bullied, what's happening, and they deal with that. And sometimes you need that extra support. And I'm saying this in terms of helping your children understand that when something's happening, whether it's to them or to a friend, it's important to tell someone else. Because yes, you can, sometimes you think you can handle it. They think they can handle it all by themselves, but it's not always the case. And sometimes you need a friend or an adult to help you, guide you through that. Maybe just emotionally help you cope with it, understand that you aren't in the wrong, you didn't do anything wrong, and it's not your fault. And then sometimes you need guidance to stop the bullying and get rid of it and understand why it was happening. So it's important to teach the children that it's not their fault and that it's important to get help. I believe that teaching young, in no matter what it is, but specifically being an upstander, and leadership, but being an upstander, teaching it young helps it grow. So if you teach it young, you start teaching it by 3 to 6 years old, maybe even younger, 2 to 6, you can build that up. By the time they're 7 to 12, they're showing upstander traits. They are advocating for people. They're advocating for things that they care about. And it just cycles and it keeps going. And it stops them from becoming a bully and becoming that force that no one wants to, that is not, that is bullying other people in a sense. No one wants to become that, and no one wants their child or child to become that. So it's important to start young, teach them why it's important to recognize others' feelings, and just build upon that and show them that they can be an upstander and that they can be an upstander for themselves, but also for others. And it's important to get help and to speak up. So, very important. Okay, next. I have a few slides about, first, this slide is about writing process. So I am sharing this to help other people. Hopefully I can help inspire someone else who's looking to write a book, looking to use Apple Books, looking to use whatever I did. Maybe they want some guidance. Sorry, excuse me. They're looking for some guidance to write a book. I'm here to help and just share. So hopefully this can just help someone out. So first, how long? This is a multi-step question. How long? I'll answer in steps, but how long did it take me to write the book? I'll ask that first. It took me around, from thinking about it and getting a few words on paper all the way to publishing it. It took about a year and a half, I will say. Maybe 2 years, a year and a half around. I started off with getting an idea, and then it kind of spiraled. And because it's for my Gold Award, there's a lot more steps I needed to follow before doing it, but the idea is the same. It took about 2 years, and it's a process. It's not something that's write it in a month and you're good. It's something that's write it for a month, really think about it, maybe write a few pages in a month, think about it, write another 2 pages, and it just keeps going until you get it all done. Next, how long should the book be? It really depends. For me, my book was around 90 pages, I'd say, which is a good amount. But for a book like mine, where you are skipping from chapter to chapter, it's not really a chronological order thing. It's more like you can look at whatever category you want to look at, and you're good. It can really be any amount of pages, really any. I mean, you want it to be a little bit more, so maybe more than 100, I'd say. But you want to make sure you have enough for them to skip to. But for that, it doesn't really matter. For younger kids, understand the demographics. So if it's younger kids, smaller books, picture books. Older kids, chapter books, maybe 100, 200, 300, whatever, something around that length. And yeah, so next, how long did it take you to get published? I'll talk about it a little bit more during the publishing process, but it took me about a week and a half, I'd say, which is very good. I will say. So next, others' opinions. This is huge. I cannot stress this enough. Getting others' opinions is so important. Having someone to lean on, rely on is big, and it can help during long days if the writing has gotten to you. I know even just in general, having other people is really helpful. But specifically for writing a book, it's time consuming. It takes a lot of energy. It's not something that everyone wants to be doing 24 hours a day. And it can sometimes feel like that. Even if it's just an hour a day, it can feel like that. So it's important in that respect. But also, talk to people in your community. Make sure that this is something that they need. So for example, if you want to write a cooking book, but not a lot of people in your community, maybe you already have 4 books, recipe books that are published in your community. Do they want another one? Is it about a specific food type? Maybe is it just Mexican food recipes? So really just see what your community wants, and that's what I mean by others' opinions. Throughout this whole writing process, I would I'd put out polls. I would put up posters and see what other people would think, and when I need help, I would lean on them. And like, for example, I have 8 main chapters in my book, and the 8 chapters were not just something I randomly thought of. They were all from a poll I sent out. And I said, hey, what are traits that you think that children should be learning nowadays that are really important? And they said, leadership, being an upstander, honesty, gratitude, and all of these things. Just put it into one pile and made it each chapter. And I also included some other people's opinions, as in for activities. I said, well, do you have any good activities of being a leader? And I would get some ideas, and I'd put it in, and I'd say, well, that's a great idea, and I'd put it in the book. And it's all about other opinions, getting ideas and brainstorming. So really important. Next is getting the word across. So now people mainly use social media. I see all the time people posting on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Hey, check out my new book. Check out this. Check out that. Look at my new website. There's so many things. Volunteer. Anything you can post on social media, and it'll get across. So that's one of the main ways that you can spread the word along. For me, I'm using videos like these, but also word of mouth is great. It really does work. I can tell my mom, like, hey, can you talk to your friends about my book? I'll say to my friends, hey, can you talk to your other friends? Can you talk to your parents? And then their parents will talk to their friends, and their friends will talk to troop leaders, and it'll just spiral until it gets to everywhere in a slow sense, but it will happen, and it will make its way across. Making videos and live videos are definitely a good route to go. It can teach other people about the book, which is what I'm doing, and it's definitely something I think is a better idea. But word of mouth is still great, just in general, and social media. Next is the publishing process. So I'm going to start off first by saying I used Apple Pages. Apple Pages is a book writing, in some way, app sent out by Apple for free. So on my new phone, I had Apple Pages downloaded. When I was originally thinking of making a book, I looked online. I said publishing sites. I wasn't going to make a lot of physical copies, but if I were to, these publishing sites would charge me maybe $30 per book. Doesn't sound that bad, but then once they make you order a amount of like the lowest amount you can get is like 100. The minimum amount is like 100 books. That means you have to pay like $300. So it really adds up. Or I guess that wouldn't even be 300. That would be a lot more. But it all adds up. It's not just $30 a book. It's more like 3,000. So $3,000. So it's important to find a good publishing site. And for me, I saw the app, downloaded it, and I said, "What is this? I need to check it out." And I clicked on it. I checked it out, and I said, "Wow, this is a good resource." And I went on it, and easily I was able to write it. I started off writing it on my phone, and then I switched to my laptop. It transferred perfectly. The sizing was great. Even if you're just doing it on a phone, it's perfect. It's really good. And once I had it all written down, it saved perfectly, and it said, there was a button that said publish. I published it, and it didn't immediately publish. It actually brought me to the Apple Books site, and it was maybe like Apple iMusic. No, sorry, not iMusic. Sorry. Apple iConnect or iTunes or something like Apple, something that they have that allows me to upload it. But basically, by pressing publish, it gave me a PDF version, a PDF of my cover, and a 15-page sample. And I took all three of those and I uploaded it to Apple Books, and it took 72 hours to upload it from there. If I had to fill out a few things. Because it was free, the book, it made it a little bit easier. I'm not exactly sure if you want to make money off of it, how that would work as much, if it would be easier. But I'm assuming you'd have to get approved. I'm not sure though. For me, it was very simple. And I hooked it all up. It said wait like 72 hours to get approved by some countries to put it on their site. And it got approved, and it immediately went up. And it was very, very helpful. I'll say that. Very helpful, and very simple, especially for first time. So, yeah. I also want to state that I'm not an expert on any of these things. So if you do want to learn more, I highly recommend watching a video or just doing it for yourself and experimenting a little bit. But I'm just sharing a little bit about my story to make it, to help at least someone out there if it helps. Okay. Next is Girl Scouts and Gold Award information. I want to say again, I'll say it again, I am not an expert. I want to talk a little bit more about my experience, and hopefully it can inspire others, but it's not at all I'm not exactly sure how to phrase it, but it's not exactly like you should not be following what exactly I'm saying, because I'm not an expert. I don't know. If you want to learn more, go to your local council and learn more. But I want to share my story. So I started Girl Scouts when I was in first grade as a daisy, and I never looked back after that. I continued my journey. I got my bronze and silver award, which is the 2 awards I got before doing my gold award. So for me, I went on the route of doing my bronze award, silver award. I think you have to earn a few journeys. I'm not exactly sure about that, but then you can be eligible for your gold award. But there's a bunch of different routes to get there. That's just the one I took. Throughout Girl Scouts, I learned about being a leader, but it wasn't just about selling cookies or going on trips. I learned so many things. I learned how to be a leader, how to be an upstander, how to code, how to bake, how to be responsible with money, how to be an entrepreneur, how to, do first aid. There are so many things I learned from Girl Scouts that I've taken away, and that's what a gold award is about. The gold award is about giving back everything that you learned. So all of these traits I've learned, everything that I've learned from Girl Scouts, I'm trying to give it back and help my community in some way. And I am using all of what I've learned and giving it back. So that's what I'm doing and what the Gold Award is really about. I love Girl Scouts. I love it so much. I wouldn't go back for anything. I wouldn't trade it. And I am fortunate enough to have amazing troop leaders who have guided me through the thick and thin, and it's been fun. It's been very, very fun and very rewarding. Every time, every meeting, every trip, it was something to look forward to. So definitely recommend if you have children, if you have young girls, highly recommend going to your local council or looking online for better resources. That maybe, because I know the Girl Scout website has so many resources, and I very much recommend it. Very much. Okay, next I have questions that I've curated from my community, from me, from my family, from just random questions I put together that people were wondering before I made the book, questions that I want to ask just in case it's not clear. So I'm going to share. What does it mean to be an upstander? I hope you know a little bit more about what it is. But just to make it clear in one concise definition, being an upstander means taking action when you see unfairness, bullying, or someone being treated badly instead of staying silent. And I think it's important to note that being an upstander isn't just about bullying, but it's about advocating for others, for an idea, for yourself. It's a whole array of things. It's not just to stand up to bullying, but there's a lot more. Why is it important for children to learn to be an upstander? It helps them build confidence, empathy, and leadership skills while creating safer and kinder communities. How can a child practice being an upstander at school? They can speak up, of course, when someone's being bullied. They can include other people who feel left out and tell a trusted adult when needed. What's the difference between being an upstander and a bystander? A bystander watches and does nothing, while an upstander takes action to help. And that's why the bystander effect is so dangerous. It's so dangerous. It's not helpful at all, and the mindset is not good. And that's why we're trying to teach people to be upstanders. How can parents encourage children to be an upstander? By modeling kindness, role-playing scenarios, praising brave actions, and teaching problem-solving skills. What personal qualities help children become good upstanders? Kindness, courage, empathy, respect, fairness. There's so many things, and they all help children stand up for others. What should a child do if they are scared to speak up directly? They can get help from a teacher, write a supportive note, or stand beside the person being targeted. And it's important to let them know that it's okay to tell someone else. It's okay. It's not telling on them. It's not ratting them out. It's getting help for them. It's not tattletaling. They're doing the right thing. How does being an upstander help friendships grow? It shows that you are trustworthy, caring, and willing to stand up for them, which strengthens bonds. Can even small actions make a difference when being an upstander? Yes, very much. Simple things like smiling at someone, inviting them to play, or saying that's not kind can change a situation by so much. How can a child remind themselves to be an upstander every day? They can use simple mottos like treat others how you want to be treated, or set personal goals to do at least one kind action every day. So, those were the questions. Thank you so much for listening and staying if you got this far. Thank you for staying to the end of the video. I really hope you learned something more about being an upstander and about me and my book. If you want to learn more about other topics like kindness, leadership, honesty, gratitude, I have all those posted, and some are coming still. So make sure to check that out if you are wondering. If you still have questions, if you want to know more, check it out on Apple Books. It's there under the Go-To Guides to Empowering Our Youth. It's there. Find it. Free. Download it. Email me if you want a PDF. And learn a little bit more if you want. Okay, thank you.